World War II, a time of lost lives, international anguish, and the setting for one of the greatest stories ever told. Adapted into the 1963 film The Great Escape, the stories of the Allied troops who became prisoners of war to the Germans during this time have become tales of heroic proportions. And today, I have the privilege of sitting down and hearing the truth from one of the men who went on the incredible journey of near-death, capture, and a newfound inner being behind the wires of Stalag Luft 3. I'm Michael Garand, and this is Prisoner of War, the Herb Corson story.
We were a medium bomber that flew at an average of 8,000 feet, and we had 13 guns and 6 people, and we had no oxygen because that was a low-flying attack bomber is what it was. And we went at about 300 miles an hour, which in those days was pretty fast. And after I trained in Big Dill for so many years, many months, we were flying at 100 feet in Africa, strafing tank columns, which is a fair game, but we did it anyway. And then after that was over, the Germans were kicked out of Africa. Then we began to fly into Italy and Sicily, and bombing ahead of what was going to happen later. When our troops were going to go into Italy and Sicily, we were what they called a softening up group. We had to go in and bomb the railroad yards, anti-aircraft guns, and troop movements. And on one trip to Naples, we got shot down. And I had to do 40 trips to get to go home. After 40 trips, you got to go back to the States and get a promotion, sell bonds, meet the girls, and forget it for a while. And the day I went down, they came into our tent one night. I just came back from a trip to Corsica. And you didn't have to fly the next. If you flew one day, you didn't have to fly the next. It was fatiguing, scary too. So anyway, I came back to the tent that night, and they said, would you fly tomorrow? What do you mean, boy, would you? You had to. If you didn't, you'd probably have a black mark on you. But I said, well, I might as well. I got to go 40 trips. I get to go home. We have 37 behind me. And they said, this is a volunteer deal. You don't have to go if you don't want to. Well, I should have known. If they were looking at people that bad, it must be a tough trip coming up. But I made a cardinal error. In the Air Force, you never volunteer for anything. So we got a hold of the enlisted man, another officer and I, said, you guys want to fly tomorrow? We'll give double credit. So we flew the next day up over Naples, Italy, and got shot down. Well, double credit gave me 39, and number 40, I'd have got to go home. All the way down my parachute, I made some strange words. Why did I go this day? And then I landed in Italy in a parachute. The plane caught fire. And there were 9 airplanes in our squadron, and 7 of us went down. So it wasn't really a very good day. It's a good day to stay home. No, you see, I was shot down in Italy, Naples, Italy, before the Italians quit the war. And I wasn't a prisoner more than a month till Italy quit. I think history said they quit in October 43 or whatever. And I was shot down in August of 43. When Italy quit the war, the Italians were not too sharp on interrogation. They asked a few questions, but I'm glad it was Italian instead of German. But after you've been a POW, where they say about a week and a half, what you know isn't worth a thing as intelligence. Intelligence moves so fast, they know more than you do in a week and a half. So the Italians gave us a preliminary investigation like, I tell you how stupid they were. They asked my co-pilot, where did you fly out of? And he made a silly, he said, Myrtle Beach. Well, you know, a 2-engine airplane wouldn't go from Myrtle Beach to Rome. And they said, well, you did. He said, Myrtle Beach. B-26 only had 2 engines, wouldn't go over 1,500 mile round trip. So they said, Italians are not too dumb. We want to ask you a real tough question. Where are you going to refuel at to go home? Spain? So they bought the impossible part. That's how stupid they were. So then we went on to Germany. We got to Germany, And we weren't really of much value to the Germans. They did go through the preliminary formality of interrogating you, but they said, no, we're going to ask you a few questions. They weren't brutal. They give you a cigarette, sit down, relax, talk with it. But in the meantime, don't lie to us. If you lie to us, it's going to be serious. You listen. If you can tell us anything we don't know, it may go better for your stay in Germany. We'll tell you what we know. They said, your name is Herb Corson, Dayton, Ohio. You went to Fairview High School. You went to Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. You graduated in 1940. You went to training in Midland, Texas, and McMillfield, Florida. That kind of disarms you. They were telling me to my mother's name, her maiden name, which I almost forgotten. And they said, now, is there anything else you want to add? Like you've been stripped naked, you don't know what to say. So all you had to do was give them name, rank, and serial number. That's all you had to tell them. But they knew it all. And the next question you might ask, well, how'd they know? I have no idea. But they knew.
Are you wounded? Twisted ankle, but that's all. You can walk, I'm told. Yes.
But the Germans were decent, and the Italians weren't bad. They didn't know where they were going. When Italy quit the war, by the way, the Germans came and took our Italian guards and all of us to Germany in one big train load. They didn't sort people out. They took everybody to Germany. I don't know what they did with the Italians. I could care less. I don't eat pizza today. And from there on, they took us up into Germany, up through the Brenner Pass and the Alps into Munich. And then we got by train. And then the train took us from Munich up near Berlin, over into Poland. And in Poland, we went to Sagan. The name of the place was S-A-G-A-N, Sagan, Poland. The Stalag Luft 3, which was a camp built by the Germans as escape-proof. Nobody could get out. Some of us did. Anyway, there was all American officers in there. The enlisted men went to another camp. The Germans had ways, you go here, you go here. They're very systematic. But there were a lot of British people there. They'd been there for 4 years since the war started, before I was even in the war. And the British were moved into another camp, and the Americans came in. We had 10,000 men in this camp at Sagan, Stalag Luft 3. They brought in sauerkraut once in a while, you might imagine, which wasn't bad. Anything was good. They brought in black bread, and they brought in what they call coffee. We call it ersatz coffee. It tasted like ink. But the bread, you might get a kick out of the bread. I think they brought the bread in from some bakery in a little town nearby. And a loaf of bread, the size of a normal loaf of bread, weighed 8 1/4 pounds. One loaf of bread. It was full of sawdust. When you ate the bread, you might get a splinter in your mouth, so look at the bread before you eat it. We put margarine on the bread and eat it. So it was edible, but can you imagine 8 1/4 pounds for a loaf of bread? I bet you a loaf of bread here Publix would maybe a pound at the most. So what we did, we took the bread, we had a slicer in the can. We'd slice the bread like bologna and lay it on top of the stove and tamp it down, get the water out of it. It was like melba toast then. It wasn't too bad. But we had that. Then we had a Red Cross box a week that started to come in finally, which was good. And the Germans gave us all the boxes. They didn't shortcut them. And then once a month you got a package from your folks back home through the Red Cross. And in the summer, the Salvation Army out of Sweden sent us seeds we could plant gardens. So we had radishes, and lettuce, and cucumbers. It was pretty good, but in the wintertime, no more gardens. And the Germans got the rations back, and our planes bombed the Red Cross trains so much we could get the Red Cross packages. That's when we lost weight. Toward the end, there wasn't anything coming in at all but bread. And we didn't live bad, though, for a while. I think all of us were in bad shape coming out of Africa. We all had dysentery and desert fever, and it was 130 in Africa. We weren't too good a shape when we got shot down. But being 25, 26 years old, we survived it. We were doing better than the guards. Most of the guards were 50s and 60s. The Germans didn't use frontline troops to guard prisoners. They used the secondary troops. And the guards wouldn't talk to you much. They weren't allowed to. When you talk to a guard, he'd walk up to you and there was a compound there where people walked like a parade ground. Between roll calls, you could wander around. People play volleyball and soccer and whatnot. And the guard would walk up to you and he'd stand there and look straight ahead. Over here is a machine gun tower, and there's one over here. And they weren't supposed to talk to us. And the guard would stand there and talk sideways, say, "Ben, is Eisenhower coming?" As if I knew. And then he'd look around and walk on. But they were pretty decent to us. There was a plan in process which we didn't know about. We got the British have been doing this for 2 years, digging this big tunnel called Harry. Going to get you out under the gates and out to the forts and get good to go home. So when you got there, you were told there was a Harry going on, but you weren't told anything. I didn't know where the tunnel was. I had no idea. But my job was to go around and pull nails. What would you need nails for? Well, when they built the tunnels, they had to put shoring in the tunnels. So they used bedboards. Everybody had to give up a bedboard or two having bed. But you couldn't go to Home Depot and buy nails. So I pulled nails for maybe 20, 30 nails a day. They used to kid me. They said, "Well, you're going to pull the wrong nail, Herb, and the building will fall down." I said, "No, I know where the master nail is." And we had 3 tunnels, which I don't think you read anywhere. One was to get away, and 2 were diversion tunnels for the Germans to find. They were bait. So when the digging would start, the diversion tunnels they'd all dig at the same time, all 3 tunnels. And then the seismograph guy would pick it up, and it was such a jumble with 3 tunnels ago, they didn't know which was which. And then they'd eventually find one, which you were supposed to find one. When the Germans found one, they thought they had it made. They quit looking. And the big one was still going. And then, of course, when they captured the guys coming out of the tunnel, they put a big fire hose down the tunnel and flooded the tunnel, caved it all in. We had electric lights in there. We had a little train pulling. And but I never got out. I wasn't. You had to be approved by our own leaders, our own leaders in camp to go. Maybe you couldn't speak enough German, or you physically weren't capable. They were trying to save your life. They didn't want you to get shot. So people had to be pretty capable to be selected to go on the escape. And the Great Escape was all British. There's no Americans in it. The plan was to go out during an air raid. The Germans would be confused doing other things, and the lights would be all out. They'd turn the lights out. Well, in the middle of the air raid, something happened. The planes going to bomb that area went to another city, and all the lights went on. And they caught the guys coming out of the tunnel. And the order was, since Hitler was so upset because this was an escape-proof camp, it kind of melted his whole story. He ordered all of us shot. Not me, I wasn't in the group. I didn't get away. So he ordered everybody to be executed. And the story I heard of Hermann Goering, the head of the Luftwaffe, intervened and said, "You know, they got prisoners in the States that we had, and we may lose them. We wouldn't have done it, but they didn't know." So Goering talked to him, and Goering talked him out of it. So he killed 50.
Was ist los? Wo sind wir? All right, you can get out now. Stretch your legs for 5 minutes. It'll take hours before you reach the camp.
You know, Meg, all this, the organization, tunneling, Tom and Harry, kept me alive. And even though I've never been happier. You know, Meg,
11 of your men are being returned today.
Oh, who?
I do not have that information. I am directed by a higher authority to inform you that 50 of your officers were shot while escaping.
Shot?
The personal effects will be returned.
How many of them were wounded?
Here are the names of the dead.
How many of the 50 were wounded?
None. The higher authority only directs me to inform you that 50 men were.
And after that, Solid Cliff 3 was tougher to live in. When we first got there, they were pretty easy on us, but once you escape, and once you show the Germans up, they lost face. And from then on, they watched everything we did. And little infraction of the rules was dealt with severely.